Ooh, sorry.
Thank you. I actually really want to start Extraordinary Roots now after that, so thanks for the idea, Jeremy. So good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming along today. I thought I'd just start by asking who here got up before, say, 6:15 in the morning? Oh, quite a lot of you. I'm impressed. Who kept repeatedly pressing the snooze alarm? And who's had some kind of stimulant like coffee already? Yeah. What about gin? I need it. Thanks for indulging me. That was just me kind of being nosy about you all and trying to calm my nerves about speaking about myself for 20 minutes. But on that note, I'm, as Jeremy said, Madeleine, and I'm the Deputy Editor of Arts Hub. I started Extraordinary Routines, and that's an interview project where I talk to creative people about their day-to-day lives. Bree Hammond, who's taking photos here today, also takes photographs for Extraordinary Routines and does a great job, so thanks, Bree. I started the project because at the time I'd just come back from a year abroad. I couldn't find work and I was desperately unhappy as a result. Trying to find work as a writer in Melbourne can be difficult. And I knew that I liked profiling creative people. And I'd always gravitated to that section of a magazine that says, describe a typical day, as if finding out how someone spent their time could reveal how they're successful and then therefore I could replicate it. So I decided to focus solely on that question and really flesh it out and use the project as a way to glean advice from friends and people that I'd admired, but also keep up my writing. And so, probably should have done that earlier. Funnily enough, when I started to actually get the project underway, it was when I was offered a role as Deputy Editor at Arts Hub, so it kind of worked out well in that sense. But now it's been about a year of running Extraordinary Routines, and I began to panic a little bit, and that's because I don't actually have a routine of my own. And I felt like, as the researcher of routines, I felt like a fraud for not having my own. I would go to bed at inconsistent times. I would wake up at all different times of the day. Evenings might consist of slumping on the couch or maybe trying to madly meet a deadline or going out for dinner with a friend but drinking too much wine. Exercise was really sporadic, if ever. Ordering takeaway was becoming a bit of a staple. I'd fall into mad social media spirals and fall into bed with a face full of makeup and having not brushed my teeth. It was a mess. But it was sort of not all chaos because at the same time I'm an avid planner and love a good to-do list, so I would get through what I needed to do, but sometimes because I'd procrastinated, it would be at the expense of missing out on something that I did want to do. So I was quite curious to see whether having a routine or more structure in my day would actually make me happier or more successful, however vague those terms can be. So I decided to start off with some research to sort of see what I should incorporate into my perfect routine. And the history books provided some gold. There's Benjamin Franklin, who used to do this thing called an air bath. So every morning he'd wake up and practically just sit in the cold naked as a way to get his creativity flowing. This is a nice one. Jane Austen used to wake up before anybody else and play the piano for a little while. Winston Churchill, he has quite an envious routine. He would stay in bed practically till mid-morning with his breakfast, and his secretary would bring him what he needed and he would just work from bed for half the day. That seems nice. Ooh. And Francis Bacon actually liked to work with a hangover, which I just cannot even fathom, but whatever works for you. And Balzac, he actually used masturbation as a way to further intensify his coffee-fueled writing binges. And in case you wanted the nitty-gritty details, he would masturbate to the very edge of orgasm, but not over. And that state, agitated, excited to the point of near madness, was his sweet spot. So I think that's something for the extraordinary roots. But yeah, so maybe the history books weren't proving that useful, but thank goodness for Google. According to the internet, habits can make you more successful, nicer, richer, a whole host of things. So, oh, I've gone too fast. Yeah. But behind the clickbait, I was starting to kind of pick out some common threads, habits that you'd expect to sort of see on a New Year's resolution list. So things like exercising more, or eating healthier, or reading, waking up early and having breakfast, limiting screen time, flossing. So what I was discovering with these habits is that they actually fit together like puzzle pieces. If you want to get up and have breakfast, it's probably a good idea that you wake up a little bit earlier. And to wake up earlier, it's probably a good idea that you go to bed the night before a bit earlier. And so to sleep better, it's probably a good idea to turn off your phone and not read the whole internet before you try to go to bed. So the rational human that I am, I thought, well, if they fit together like puzzle pieces, maybe I should just do all of the habits in 30 days and become this routine superhuman. So I collected all of the habits from Google and the history books, as well as from interviews that I'd done for Extraordinary Routines. But as they say, to be successful, you should really just do one habit at a time. So day 1 would be, for instance, wake up early. Day 2 would be wake up early and exercise. Day 3 would be wake up early, exercise, and switch my phone off at 10 p.m. And so on and so forth until I'd accumulated 30 habits over 30 days. So what exactly did I do? I kicked off the experiment with a habit actually inspired by Jeremy, who practically eats the same thing every day, and it's porridge for lunch, if anyone was wondering. Other habits included learning how to juggle, learning the piano, exercising, quitting coffee and sugar and alcohol, making sure I flossed, saying no to things, also giving things away that I hadn't used for a while. And yeah, to say the least, I was exhausted. My morning routine alone consisted of waking up at 6 a.m. and sculling a glass of water before getting out of bed, then going downstairs and drinking some green tea because I wasn't able to have some coffee. Then I'd hop on the computer to do some creative writing, similar to morning pages, if anyone has read The Artist's Way. Then I would do something Extraordinary Routines related, whether that would be answering emails or transcribing an interview. Then I'd hop outside to go for a run, just for 10 minutes because that's all I could manage. And then I would do some stretches as I listened to a 6-minute meditation recording. And then I would go back upstairs and do coconut oil pulling, if anyone's heard of that. Basically, it's getting a tablespoon of oil, coconut oil, and you put it in your mouth and swill it around for 20 minutes. And the idea is that all the bacteria clings to the oil, and so that when you spit out the oil, the bacteria is gone, your skin's glowing, your gums are healthy. Yeah. And then I would dash to get the tram to work in the morning. I'd listen to a podcast instead of doing my usual Facebook newsfeed scroll, and then I'd go about my day. So, as insane as it sounds, I actually did manage to learn a lot from the project, and in 5 things to be exact. So what were they? Lesson 1 is that it is more about being present than productive. This is something that I've borrowed from Maria Popova of the wonderful site Brain Pickings, but it's something that definitely rang true during the experiment. Yes, it meant that I was getting a lot of things done and I mastered the art of getting up early, but it was at the expense of, solely sticking to the regime was at the expense of missing out on other things. So I think that we tend to glorify being productive, but if it's our sole focus, we can miss out on the good stuff. And so the takeaway there is that it's not how much you do, but it's how aware you are of what you're doing. And so it actually made me realise that how much time I waste on social media, or how I'm actually happier if I don't have a hangover on a Saturday morning. There's some habits that I think contribute to making your life better, and then there's some that just feel like another tedious to-do. And it's really important to actually know the difference, especially between the kind of busy that you want to be doing things that you enjoy, and the busy of doing things that you actually don't want to do. So it actually reminds me of this quote by Bob Dylan, and a man is a success if he gets up in the morning and gets to bed at night, and in between he does what he wants to do. Every now and then I think it's important to reflect on your routine and ask yourself if you've actually done the things that you want to do, and if you haven't, then work towards changing it. I don't think that's something that can be immediate. I think it would be naive to say that if you don't like your job, then just quit. But if you kind of reflect on it and you're aware, then you can work towards changing it. And lesson 2, we're all human. Podcast was part of the experiment, as I mentioned, and one of my favourites is by Tara Brach, who's a psychologist and meditation teacher, and she has this saying that she likes to recall during her podcast, so I thought I'd read it to you now. It goes like this: if you can start the day without caffeine or pet pills, if you can be cheerful while ignoring aches and pains, if you can resist complaining and boring people with your troubles, if you can eat the same food every day and be thankful for it, if you can take criticism and blame without resentment, if you can face the world without lies and deceit, if you can relax without liquor, if you can sleep without the aid of drugs, then you're probably a dog. We're all human, and we all slip up from our daily routine time to time, and I definitely slipped up during the experiment. I slept in, I forgot my juggling practice, I would look at social media outside of my allocated time, but instead of beating myself up for failing like I normally would, I thought I'd actually came up with an idea that acknowledged the very human tendency to fail. And so I'd like to introduce the Sabbath. And the Sabbath is a Sabbath from your habits. And it basically meant that for 24 hours each week, I could sleep in if I wanted to. I could eat sugar. I could just basically be a free woman. Routine eliminates the excuses, such as not having enough time or being too busy, because you've already built that little pocket into your day and told yourself that you're going to do that creative task or write for 10 minutes, whatever it may be. And last but not least, lesson number 5 is that it's actually the internal habits that count. My most toxic habits and the ones that are the hardest to get rid of are the ones that are going on in my head, so the ones where I'm beating myself up or comparing myself to other people. But the experiment actually taught me that by being aware of what I do every day, it can actually make me more aware of how I'm thinking. I quite like this: it isn't what you have or who you are or where you are or what you are doing that makes you happy or unhappy. It is what you think about. So I think that we can have this tendency to fixate on either exercising more or eating better, and that will make us happier. But really, you can do everything perfectly. Your morning routine can be nailed, but you can still be feeling crap. Basically, I think it's more important to see it as not actually being perfect, but instead being kinder to yourself and acknowledging that it's okay not to do a certain thing at a certain time on a certain day. Learning that has actually done more for me than any early morning would. So I think it's actually more about the routine being the grounding, and it's what we do, but it's not necessarily who we are. Thank you.
We have a few minutes for Q&A. Does anyone have a question for Madeleine? Yes.
Did you write about those 30 days on a blog or anywhere? Like, did you document it?
I've got that in process, and I'm very, very excited to share it. So, yeah, I can share exactly what I did each day and how I felt about it. So I'll definitely put a link to that on my blog.
Have you kept anything
Yes, the early mornings I actually became really fond of. So that's something that I have kept. Also, trying not to drink coffee has really kind of helped as well. I've slipped up from that a few times, but it's definitely something that I'm trying to steer away from. Other things like meditation, I actually couldn't really get into that much until I found this one track that just goes for 5 minutes long, and it's more just that guided kind of how to clear out your thoughts a little bit. So that's sort of one thing that I could refer to, but it's not a daily practice. What else have I kept? Juggling, I didn't even master. That is really hard. So yeah, I feel, I don't think I'm going to persevere there. But piano is something that I gave up as a 12-year-old, and this was a really great way to reintroduce it, and I'm going to continue to have weekly lessons. Yeah.
What's the strangest habit of the people that you've interviewed, apart from my...
Your porridge is... well, everyone's so different and unique. I think the most unique routine that I had was with Julia DeVille, who's an extraordinary jeweler and taxidermist, and I had the privilege of speaking to her when she was going through recovery for adrenal fatigue. And so her routine actually consisted of waking up very early to do yoga, and she did about 3 sets of meditation throughout the day. But the other thing is that she only ate fruit. She was on a regime for 8 weeks where she would eat 1 kilogram of cherries for breakfast, and that's a lot of cherries. And also have like a banana avocado smoothie for dinner. So that was very unique. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
Do you think self-discipline is like a finite resource that you kind of have, or does being strict with yourself lead to sort of an increase in self-discipline? Like, do you think it's sort of can be?
I think that's a really interesting question, and should be studied, I think. Yeah, I think for me, I think it would be different for everybody. Maybe self-discipline is the thing that motivates you more. I know that with a deadline for me, that's the thing that gets me. But I think some people maybe potentially have they might come unraveled with such self-discipline. Yeah, so, but it'd be interesting to look at, I think. Yeah.
How do you manage the 2 projects at the moment with your routine, like reconciling is a full-time job with, with this ambitious side project and everything else that you kind of do? I mean, when things kind of come up, and I guess one thing that's hard is when a routine is kind of disturbed, like you have to be resilient in terms of how you deal with those things. Do you have any strategies for dealing with that, or have you learned to deal with that better?
This experiment, that's the biggest takeaway that I had, was because I would beat myself up if I if I missed something or something went astray. But then this just taught me that it's more important to be like, okay, that didn't work out, move on. It doesn't mean that you have to throw it all away. It is hard to juggle the 2, but that's why I really like the early mornings, to kind of get at least that little bit done. But also I don't set myself unrealistic goals. I don't have a weekly newsletter that I have to fill out. I actually just do the interviews when I want to and when I have the time to. I think sometimes side projects can be unruly when you have really high expectations for them. But I have my full-time job and I have extraordinary routines, which I love doing, and I do it when I can. So the output is actually really quite small.
Cool. We have time for one more question if anyone has one. Anyone? Did you juggle scarves or just balls?
Balls. Gosh, there's so many.
I try to learn how to juggle myself,
Scarves,
and I
yeah.
use scarves because they come down really slow.
I kind of went straight for the balls. Yeah.
I think we'll end it there. You can't do anything than that. Let's give another hand to Madeleine.
Thank you. Thank you.